Hi, I'm Sarah Glassberg.
I'm Brad Pilcher.
And this is AJFF In Conversation, the Jewish film podcast.
And we are back from our hiatus. We're back for a brand new season. It is after the 2021 festival. It is after March. This is not an April Fool's joke. We are returned.
I think by the time this episode actually releases, April Fool's will be a bit of a distant memory, with the news cycle still kind of being what it is and time still being blurry. But we are very excited to be back. And I think there's hope on the horizon. There's a lot of fun stuff in store for AJFF and for this podcast in particular.
I thought the entire month was April Fool. I thought you spent the entire month pranking everybody that you knew. Is that not the way that it works?
Oh, goodness. I hope not. I don't know if anyone has the stamina for that these days.
Yeah, we probably should go easy on everybody. It is more than a year into the pandemic, although, as you said, there is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There are vaccinations that are happening. I am one dose in on my vaccination regimen, so I am looking forward, hopefully, by the end of this month, to going back into movie theaters, maybe, fingers crossed. I don't know about you, if you've gotten your shots yet.
I am also one shot in. I'm getting my second dose next week. I agree with you. There are a lot of things. I will say I set my own bar pretty low this past year, where I am just most looking forward to food shopping again at places like Trader Joe's. I'm not going to lie. I was very conservative about what we chose to do and not do. So we've been doing grocery pickups. All of that being said, I do miss going to the movies so much. If anything, I hope drive-ins continue. I think our drive-in was super fun. I did one other drive-in recently. And so even if it's just doing more of that, I think that would be where my comfort zone is. But I am excited for movie theaters to be reopening. And I think a lot of people are going to start to feel safer doing those kinds of things, which is really cool.
I feel like there's so much pent-up demand for people to be able to go out and do anything, that there's going to be this period of time where people go kind of nuts, and everybody who feels comfortable going out to movie theaters is going to go crazy. It's going to be like a huge spring, early summer season for movie theaters, fingers crossed. I don't know. But believe it or not, there are movies that are coming out in theaters right now, including one we want to talk about this week. I should say this whole episode is about what to watch in April, because there are lots of Jewish films coming out this month. And believe it or not, one of them is coming out in theaters. Shiva Baby, which was at our 2021 festival, at our drive-in, as you mentioned, and it's releasing in theaters this month, so you can see it if you are comfortable. If you are vaccinated, you can go down to the local Cineplex and watch Anna Seligman's first feature as a director. And I hope that you are vaccinated, and I hope that you are able to go see it, because it's a really good film. I actually saw it way back at the virtual Toronto International Film Festival, and was so excited to be able to get it into our lineup for the 2021 festival. I don't know if you saw it, Sarah.
I did. I saw it at our Young Professionals Night drive-in at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Home Depot backyard. That was my first drive-in experience. Listeners of this podcast will know that it was a new foreign thing for me, and this movie was so special to see with a crowd, even though we were all kind of sharing that experience separately in our respective vehicles. But it's such a unique kind of dark comedy almost. It has this rhythm to it that I really think if you can go see it with a relative crowd, I definitely encourage it. And it's based on a short as well. She adapted it from a short film that we also showed at AJFF. So it's a really special movie. I think our drive-in screening of it coincided with the brand new trailer and poster kind of making the rounds online. And people have been really excited for it, and for good reason.
Yeah, the trailer and the poster I thought were awesome. I mean, it's one of those films where it looks like an indie comedy and fine, and you don't usually see great marketing assets on those things. But the poster for this film is beautiful. And you're right. It is kind of a film that benefits from a crowd. It's a comedy, and it's a dark comedy, but it's a interesting film, interesting backstory on the film. So I cannot recommend it enough. It is coming out in theaters. It is the only film that we are recommending this month that is coming to theaters. Everything else you can watch at home if you are not vaccinated yet, if you do not feel comfortable going out, including a couple of films that are coming out on physical media, on Blu-ray and DVD, that are not necessarily new films per se, but they are new to Blu-ray, I think. One of those is The Last Days, which may be one of the most famous Holocaust documentaries that has ever been made. Steven Spielberg executive produced this. This was way back in like 1998. It won the Academy Award that year for Best Documentary. So it's like 23 years old. Not a new film, but if you have not seen it, it is really incredibly powerful. It centers on 5 Hungarian Jews who survived imprisonment in Auschwitz. They include a grandmother and a teacher and a businessman, an artist, and a U.S. congressman who is no longer a U.S. congressman. But the film itself was just incredibly well made. I am usually kind of jaded on Holocaust docs because I've seen so many of them. We've had so many of them at the festival, so I'm always a little bit of a snob when it comes to them. I've seen them. I have high standards for them, and this one, is one of the best, and I really do recommend it. And if you haven't seen it, now you can. It's very easy. You just get the Blu-ray, watch it at home. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Sarah.
I have not, but I'm sort of the opposite. I'm always hungry for this storytelling. And yeah, I had never heard of this one. And I will also say we're in this sweet spot where, given that this was the winner of the 1998 Academy Award for Best Documentary, I'm also kind of in that nostalgic, retrospective kind of mindset lately with the Oscars coming up. I'm a big award season person, and so knowing that about this film also makes me particularly interested. I feel like I'm sort of catching up on this year's nominees and past year's nominees and winners, so I think that's another thing it has going for it, being new to physical media right now. And the other film that is coming out on physical media that we wanted to highlight today is another documentary featured at the 2020 AJFF, and it's Oliver Sacks' His Own Life. It's this very candid look at Oliver Sacks' battles with drug addiction, homophobia, and a medical establishment that long shunned his pioneering work. This was a film that my husband, when he was on the film evaluation committee, he really enjoyed this documentary. He was thrilled that it made it in. I think it was very popular in our festival that year. So if you haven't seen this one, definitely seek it out.
Yeah, it was incredibly popular. It's a really well-made film. It's interesting when you get these kind of biopic-esque documentaries. This was not a biopic per se, but it's a really hard kind of documentary to do because everything about it hinges on the subject, on the person that the documentary is about. And in my experience, more often than not, the subject is not interesting enough. They're interesting to a point, but to carry a feature-length documentary, they really need to be a bit of a character, frankly. And there needs to be a lot of a lot of substance. And in the case of Oliver Sacks, he is a great character. There is an enormous amount of there. And I think right now, especially when we're all kind of seeing issues in the news around homophobia and transphobia and issues with medical care and access to medical care, that this is a particularly relevant story, but it is kind of timeless too. It really does dive into a singular mind, someone who is a bit of a genius, and how they grapple with their own mortality, with their own identity, and their own failings and shortcomings, which I think is a universal thing, but rarely do you see it quite as starkly as I think you see it in this film. I'm really excited that people will be able to watch it more widely. It is, it's just really, really good. If you don't know who Oliver Sacks is, you should Google him because he is a fascinating character. But this film really, really does thread that needle of carrying a feature-length runtime around just this guy's story. I really do recommend it.
Yeah, I personally haven't gotten to see this one, so I'm always, again, very thrilled to hear these recommendations and to catch up on things that I haven't seen. And I also know that a lot of the interviews were shot just after his terminal diagnosis, so I think that really, I've heard that that can really affect the way this documentary came together and the way it feels for the audience. So definitely something I'm going to check out. Of course, if you're looking for things that are on demand, different streaming platforms, there is always great Jewish content coming out on there, particularly on Netflix this month. We've got two wonderful Holocaust narratives. The first one is The Pianist, where Adrian Brody had actually won an Academy Award for his portrayal of a survivor. This is from 2002. I have seen this film. I think it is outstanding. It's something that I actually want to rewatch, so I'm actually thrilled that it's on Netflix. And if you haven't seen it, it's really moving. It's really powerful, and his performance is just amazing.
Speaking of Academy Awards, yeah. And also this is a film that falls into that category of problematic directors. So for me, I'm actually interested in revisiting it because, I saw it when it first came out, and it's great. There was controversy around it at the time, though. I mean, this is Roman Polanski. This is a guy who's essentially a fugitive from justice, living in Europe. So how do you feel about that? I don't know how I feel about it now. I know at the time it was sort of an interesting little factoid around the film. But I think if you can put that aside, take that out of your mindset, just focus on the performance that Adrian Brody delivered, which got him the Academy Award. It's just, he's not the kind of actor that I think has a huge range. He's not that guy, but within his range, his performances are always just absolutely top notch. And this was probably, I think, rarely does somebody win the Academy Award for their actual best performance. Oftentimes they win it for something that's not quite their best, but they'd missed out on their best performance. In this case, I actually think Adrian Brody won it for his best performance of his career. I don't know if you feel the same way, but for me, this is a very interesting film to talk about because of all of the stuff around it.
I completely agree. I'm really glad you brought that up. I think I do sort of forget sometimes that Roman Polanski did this film, but I likewise am interested in rewatching it for that reason too. It's definitely something we can't ignore. So I'm glad that you brought it up when I didn't, because this idea of separating art from artists, it's something that we will want to explore on this podcast soon. It's something that is very timely. So, tempering our recommendation of this film with that kind of context, I think, is important.
I feel like one of us should at least try to pronounce the character's name. Vladislav Spilman, maybe, I think.
It has been too long since I've seen it to remember, and so that's why even in my notes I sort of skipped over it. But admittedly,
yeah, it's a. I'm sure it's easy once you hear it, but every time I read the synopsis for this film, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this character's name, and it's not it's a real person. So apologies in advance to anybody who has been offended by my butchering of that name. It's not the only Holocaust film, though, on Netflix coming out this month, which you mentioned. And I will say that the other one that is coming out is a slam dunk from, I have not seen it, but all you have to say to me is Jessica Chastain, and I'm in. And Zookeeper's Wife is the name of the film. It's based on a nonfiction book about zookeepers at the Warsaw Zoo who helped save hundreds of Jews during the invasion of Poland by Germany. I don't know how they did it. I don't know what zookeeping has to do with saving hundreds of Jews, but it stars. All I need to know is that it stars two-time Academy Award nominee Jessica Chastain, because she is one of the best actresses I've ever seen, certainly working today. I'm a huge fan, and literally she's one of the few actors who you just put their name on the poster and I'm in. It's a very small list, but Jessica Chastain is on it. So I'm really looking forward to watching this finally, because I missed out when it was in theaters.
It's really underrated. It's beautifully shot. I will also always encourage listeners to seek out films by female filmmakers. This is directed by Nikki Caro, who most recently did the live action Mulan, but she's done this fantastic movie called Whale Rider. I believe she's from New Zealand originally. She's done a movie called North Country with, I believe, Charlize Theron. And yeah, so it's got this very different perspective to it. I am a huge animal lover. There are animals in this film galore, and it's moving in that way. The way that they, as you sort of alluded to, the way that they utilize the spaces that they have and what means they have at their disposal to help people. I think it was very underrated and under the radar when it came out. So I hope that it has this second life on Netflix for sure. And Jessica Chastain agreed. She is always great. She carries this movie quite a bit as well. It's all around just really solid. So I personally recommend this one for sure.
All right. I think we've saved the best for last. And I will just preface this by saying if you do not have HBO Max, you should absolutely subscribe to HBO Max just for this alone. Sara, can you recreate, are you even capable of trying to recreate the laugh that Fran Drescher trademarked on 6 seasons of The Nanny from CBS, the 90s sitcom, which has now arrived on HBO Max? It's not necessarily the best sitcom you've ever watched, but if you've never watched Fran Drescher in action, it is a thing to behold. I won't even try, but that laugh for me was so much a part of the late 90s sort of TV landscape. It almost appears like there's nothing else about the show that I remember, but I remember Fran Drescher. I remember the laugh. I remember the acts. I just remember Fran Drescher's voice. I don't know if anyone can ever recreate it except for Fran Drescher. I don't know if you can. I don't know if you've even seen this show. Have you seen The Nanny?
Oh yes. I grew up on like all the great 90s sitcoms, and I think there's such a nostalgia for that now. This one being not even at the top of some people's list, which I think is a travesty. Like people talk about all these other 90s sitcoms, Full House, all these various shows that are getting reboots and reunions, and this one, I'm glad that it's going on HBO Max because I kind of want to revisit it as an adult. I know I cannot recreate her laugh unless I have a very bad cold. If I have like no voice and, you know, a touch of bronchitis, like I'll let you know, and then we could try to have me imitate her laugh. That's about the only time that I can get close. But no, I'm not doing that on air right now.
I feel like she had to have had insurance because she must have been hurting her voice to do it. And she could do it on command.
Yeah. It kind of just is her performance is so effortless. Like it just feels like that's her. She didn't have to try that hard to do this voice or this laugh. The other thing I remember besides that was iconic were all her outfits. I just, as a kid, I remember wanting to wear everything that she had, that she wore on the show. It's fun. And again, yeah, all 6 seasons of it are going to be on HBO Max this month. So I'm very excited. I'm also from Queens. So there was always that little connection for me.
I don't think she was acting. I don't. This may come across as a bit of an insult, but this is not a performer who had enormous amounts of range. Like she was made for a sitcom where she could play this character, and that's kind of all she's ever done. But I mean, my thing is, so you're from there. You're from the area. Like, how ridiculously unrealistic or realistic was her performance?
There are a lot of shows that rely on stereotypes, and I think this was definitely, the accent was a little over the top. Everything's dialed up in this, and I will say I've seen Fran Drescher in some other roles, and she has more range than it might seem from the show, but I really do think she was like born to play this part. I think that's what it is. It's like I've seen her go on to do other things. She was in a film in our festival just a couple years ago where she plays like this matriarch, and it's semi-dramatic and it's really a great performance. It's more nuanced, but when she is in this role, it is just effortless. It's magnetic, dynamic, and yeah, it's a little stereotypical and over the top and not super realistic, but it's just so fun. It's not offensive, I don't think. I mean, again, I haven't watched it more recently, and certainly expectations and things that are acceptable have changed, but that's another reason I think it's going to be an interesting thing to be able to go see on HBO Max, just to revisit. Yeah.
All right. Well, I share your enthusiasm for that show. That's 5 films and 1 television show. That should be more than enough to keep you busy for the month of April. If you don't have HBO Max, you should get it. If you don't have Netflix, I don't know what country you're living in. Everybody has Netflix, don't I feel like? So go out, get these films, watch them. Please let us know what you think about them. You can email us at inconversation@ajff.org and let us know what you think. Do you enjoy these shows as much as we have? Do you enjoy these films? And then we will get back to you and have a little bit of a dialogue. So I'm looking forward to that too.
Absolutely. Until next time, we are your hosts, Sarah Glassberg
and Brad Pilcher.
Also producing is Chris Holland, who is also our technical director and editor.
Thank you again to AJFF Communications Manager Leah Sitkoff for curating the monthly What to Watch feature. You can read it at ajff.org, and we'll continue to cover it on this podcast every month as well.
The music you have been humming to all show long is by the incomparable Joe Alterman. Please look him up wherever you get your music.
You can always find more from us as well as show notes at ajff.org/inconversation. And as I said, our email address is inconversation@ajff.org. Drop us a line with questions, comments, and we might just respond in future episodes.
Don't forget to subscribe in your podcast app of choice or check out our YouTube channel for new episodes. Give us a rating, a review. Every little bit helps.
Last but not least, we have to mention that we cannot continue to do this podcast or any of our other digital programs without your support. If you're willing and if you're able, please make a donation at ajff.org/inconversation. And of course, please tell your friends about the show. Until next time, goodbye.